Quick recap if you're just joining. My coworker Mark took full credit for a proposal I spent 3 weeks building, presenting it to a major client as entirely his own work and never mentioning my name once. Our boss sent a company-wide email praising only him. Instead of confronting him directly, I quietly forwarded my boss the original project file, showing the full version history under my name going back 3 weeks, with no accusations, just the facts. An hour later, my boss messaged me asking why my name was never mentioned during the pitch, and asked to meet the next morning. If you haven't seen part 1, I'd recommend watching that first. Links in the description. Otherwise, let's pick up right where we left off. Next morning, I go into my boss's office. She pulls up the email she sent to the team, then pulls up the file history I'd sent her the day before side by side. She asks me directly, "Walk me through how this proposal actually came together." So I did. Calmly, factually, no editorializing. I told her the timeline, when the project was assigned, how the 3 weeks broke down, what Mark contributed versus what I built. I didn't say Mark was lying or trying to steal credit. I just laid out what happened. She asked a few follow-up questions: who ran which client calls, who built the pricing model, who wrote the strategic framework. I answered all of it honestly, and every answer was backed up by the file history sitting right there on her screen. At the end of the conversation, she said something I'll remember for a while. This explains a lot, actually. This isn't the first time I've heard something like this about Mark. That caught my attention. Turns out, and I only learned this afterward, there was another employee, someone from a different team, who Mark had done something similar to almost 2 years earlier. That person never said anything at the time, just quietly grew resentful and eventually transferred departments to get away from working with him. Before I get into the investigation, I want to read a few of the top comments from when this story was originally posted, because a lot of you had strong opinions on how this was handled. One of the top comments said something along the lines of, "This is exactly how you handle it. No yelling, no confrontation, just receipts. Let the evidence do the talking." Another comment pointed out that forwarding the file with zero commentary was actually the smartest part, because it made it impossible for Mark to later claim the person was overreacting or being dramatic, since there was nothing dramatic in the message at all. A few people did ask why I didn't speak up during the actual meeting when Mark first took the lead. And that's fair, I've thought about that a lot since. But correcting someone mid-pitch in front of a major client felt like it risked making the whole team look disorganized in front of someone we were trying to close a deal with. I made the call to handle it afterward instead, where it could be dealt with properly. Okay, back to the story. My boss looped in HR, mostly to be thorough and because this was tied to a major client account, not because I asked for that. HR pulled the file history themselves, talked to a couple of other people who'd worked adjacent to the project, and from what I understand, also reached out to that other employee from 2 years earlier to ask if they wanted to share anything, which they eventually did. Mark was brought in for a conversation later that week. I obviously wasn't in the room, but from what my boss told me afterward, his first response was to downplay it, saying he didn't mean anything by it, that presenting is just how he naturally talks, and that he assumed everyone in the room already knew it, was a team effort. That might have flown as an isolated incident. But once the file history was laid out clearly, showing almost 3 weeks of documented work under my name, plus a second, independent account of similar behavior from years earlier, it became a lot harder to frame as an innocent slip of the tongue. I want to be fair to Mark here because I think it matters. I don't believe he set out that morning thinking, "Today I will erase my co-worker's contribution entirely." I think he's the kind of person who's used to being the face of things, who's comfortable taking the spotlight, and who just didn't think about how it would land. That doesn't excuse it. But I don't think he's a cartoon villain either. I think he's someone who got used to skating by on charisma and got caught not doing the actual work for once. So here's where things landed. Mark wasn't fired. I want to be clear about that because I know some people were hoping for a more dramatic ending. But he did receive a formal written warning. He was pulled from lead presenter duties on new client pitches for a probationary period. And my boss made it a point going forward that project credit gets documented and communicated clearly to clients and to leadership, specifically because of what happened. My boss also sent a follow-up email to the original huge win thread, this time properly crediting me as the lead strategist and primary builder of the proposal, with Mark listed as a supporting team member. She didn't call anyone out publicly or explain why the correction was happening. It was handled quietly, which honestly I appreciated. Mark and I still work together. It's a little awkward, I won't pretend it isn't. He apologized to me directly about a week later, I think somewhat genuinely, somewhat because he knew he had to. I accepted it, and we've mostly moved on, though I'll admit I double-check now that my name is properly attached to anything I contribute to before a client ever sees it. Looking back, a few things stuck with me from this whole situation. First, document everything. Not because you're expecting to get betrayed, but because it protects you either way. That file history is the only reason this didn't just become a he said, she said situation. Second, you don't have to make a scene to stand up for yourself. I know a lot of these stories online end with some big dramatic confrontation, and honestly, I think the quiet, factual version worked a lot better here. Nobody could accuse me of being petty or dramatic, because there was nothing dramatic about a file attachment. And third, sometimes the people who do this kind of thing have done it before, to someone who never said anything. My saying something ended up giving that other coworker from 2 years earlier a chance to finally be heard too. I didn't know that would happen when I hit send on that email, but it did. Quick update for anyone wondering how things are now. It's been a few months since this happened. I actually ended up being formally assigned as lead strategist on our next major account, partly, I think, because leadership wanted to make sure my contributions were properly recognized this time around after everything came out. Mark and I are civil. Not close, but civil. He's been noticeably more careful about giving credit on team projects since then. Whether that's genuine growth or just him being cautious, I honestly can't say for sure. But either way, I haven't had a repeat of what happened that day. So that's the full story of the coworker who took credit for 3 weeks of my work in front of our whole team, and how one calm, factual email ended up changing a lot more than just my situation. If you've ever had a coworker try to take credit for your work, let me know what happened in the comments. I read every single one. And some of the stories from the original post honestly rival this one, and if you missed part 1, catch it linked in the description. If you want more workplace stories like this, subscribe. I've got a lot more where this came from.